The bridge of the galactic hegemony flagship, the indomitable will, was a place of serene, calculated perfection. Its polished chromaloy floors reflected the cool, blue-white light of the main view screen, which currently displayed a swirling nebula that looked like a deity had spilled its paint set across the velvet of space. Everything was quiet, efficient, and run with the kind of soul-crushing precision only a multi-millennial galactic government could achieve. It was a cathedral dedicated to the gods of order and overwhelming technological superiority. Standing at the command dais was Lord Commander Kael'thar of the Kthar Imperium. He was, to put it mildly, an intimidating spectacle. Standing well over 8 feet tall, his body was a fortress of polished black chitinous plates, overlapping in intricate patterns that spoke of a warrior lineage stretching back to his species' primordial swamps. For powerful, multi-jointed arms were crossed over a chest broad enough to be used as a landing pad for a personal transport. His mandibles clicked softly as he surveyed the star charts, a sound like shears snipping through reality. To the Kthar, strength was everything. Physical prowess, martial honor, the indomitable will to conquer. They saw the galaxy as a series of challenges to be met with overwhelming force, and they had yet to find a challenge they could not crush. Beside him, seemingly floating an inch above the deck, was High Proctor Loriana of the Cygnian Ascendancy. Where Kael'thar was a monument to physical power, Loriana was a testament to intellectual supremacy. Her people were silicon-based, crystalline beings whose bodies were intricate lattices of glowing filaments and faceted gems. She did not speak with a mouth, but with a series of resonant chimes that were instantly translated by the ship's universal system into precise, academic, and faintly condescending prose. Her mind, it was said, could process quantum-level calculus in the time it took most organics to blink. She saw the universe not as a battlefield, but as a complex equation to be solved, a puzzle where all the messy, biological variables were unfortunate but necessary complications. These two beings, the embodiment of galactic might and mind, represented the prevailing power structure of the hegemony, and they were both currently staring, with a shared sense of bemused pity, at their third companion on the bridge. He was the human. Galactic consensus on humanity was, for the most part, settled. They were a minor species from a ridiculously over-dangerous planet in a forgotten spiral arm of the galaxy. Physiologically, they were a joke. They had no natural armor, no claws, no venom, no redundant organs of any significance. Their bones were laughably fragile, their skin pathetically soft. They were endoskeletal bipeds, a fundamentally unstable design prone to all manner of gravitational and locomotive mishaps. Their sensory organs were mediocre at best, and they were susceptible to a staggering array of bacteria, viruses, and simple atmospheric imbalances. They were, in the esteemed opinion of the hegemony's Xenological Council, a species of cosmic prey that had somehow stumbled its way into building spaceships. Their greatest contribution to the galactic stage so far had been their bafflingly complex art forms and a series of high-calorie, nutritionally void foodstuffs that were considered a guilty pleasure on more than a few worlds. I must once again register my formal objection to its presence on the bridge, Lord Commander, Loriana chimed, her crystalline facets pulsing with a soft, irritated lavender light. The human liaison's designated zone is the cultural exchange deck. The command nexus is a place for serious strategic deliberation. Kael'thar made a low rumbling sound in his chest, the Kthar equivalent of a sigh. High Proctor, diplomacy requires these gestures. The Terran Federation is a new signatory. We must appear welcoming. Even if their primary diplomatic gift was something called a fruit basket, he looked down at the human, his multifaceted eyes struggling to find anything of note. Besides, it is harmless. And that was the very word that defined Jake. Harmless. Jake stood near a secondary console, looking for all the world like he had gotten lost on his way to a mid-level accounting seminar. He was of average height for his species, with a body that suggested a deep and abiding respect for comfortable chairs. His hair was an unthreatening shade of brown. He wore soft fabric trousers, a collared shirt with a pattern of tiny, unidentifiable shapes, and shoes that made a soft squeaking sound on the chromaloid deck. His entire being radiated a profound sense of non-threat, like a damp towel or a lukewarm cup of tea. He was currently sipping a beverage from a ceramic mug that had the words, "Don't talk to me until I've had my coffee," printed on it, a cultural artifact that had baffled 3 separate Sigmian linguistic analysis engines. "Hey now, I can't hear you," Jake said cheerfully, lowering his mug. His voice was pleasant, informal, and utterly out of place in the sterile perfection of the bridge. And for the record, it was a very nice fruit basket. The pears were exceptional. Loriana pulsed a sharp, dismissive violet. "Your species' obsession with decaying organic matter is irrelevant. We are monitoring the transport and analysis of specimen 734. It is a matter of galactic security. A subject your people, with their history of internal squabbling and self-inflicted planetary crises, have little grasp of." "Specimen 734, Jake mused, taking another sip. "Is that what we're calling it? Sounds a bit impersonal. Does it have a name?" Kaeldar turned his massive head, his mandibles clicking in what could only be described as annoyance. "Human. It is a gloomfang from the void wastes of Cygnus X-1. It does not have a name. It is a weapon, a biological anomaly of unparalleled lethality. We are studying it to understand its unique psionic capabilities. It is not a, what is your term? A puppy to be named." Right. Gloomfang. Got it," Jake said, nodding sagely. He looked at the main view screen. "So, this thing is dangerous, I take it? On a scale of 1 to, say, stepping on a Lego brick in the middle of the night. Where are we at?" Before Loriana could chime a response that would have certainly involved several dozen scathing academic references, the universe decided to answer Jake's question for him. The serene, blue-white light of the bridge instantly plunged into a blood-red emergency glow. A klaxon began to scream, a piercing, multi-tonal shriek designed to bypass the auditory systems of 100 different species and drill straight into their panic centers. It was a sound that had not been heard on the Hegemony's flagship in over a standard century. "Report." Kaeldar boomed, his 4 arms snapping to attention, his voice cutting through the din like a plasma cannon through unshielded plating. A panicked voice, belonging to a reptilian Xylosian officer, crackled over the comms. "Containment breach. Specimen 734 is loose. Stasis field failed. Energy cascade. Oh, spirits of the void, it's out. It's in the lower decks." The transmission ended in a wet, static-filled scream. Loriana's crystalline form flashed with frantic, discordant colors, a cosmic garage sale of anxiety. "Impossible." The containment matrix was reinforced with gravitic plating and a quad-redundant energy source. The failure probability was 1 in 10 to the power of 42. "Your probabilities do not seem to be helping us now, High Proctor," Kaeldar snarled. He slammed a massive fist onto a console, and a blast shield began to descend over the main view screen. "Seal the bridge. All security teams to Deck 12. Arm heavy plasma repeaters. Lethal force is authorized." The ship, once a bastion of calm, became a hive of disciplined terror. Orders were barked. Security officers in gleaming power armor scrambled through the corridors, and the low hum of the ship's engines was replaced by the thudding of blast doors sealing section after section. It was a textbook response to a catastrophic failure. And amidst it all, Jake took another thoughtful sip from his coffee mug. He lowered the mug and sighed, a quiet, weary sound that was somehow more audible than the screaming klaxons. "Well, that's not ideal." Kaeldar and Loriana both turned to stare at him. The Lord Commander was a coiled spring of righteous fury, his chitinous plates vibrating with battle lust. The High Proctor was a whirlwind of frantic analysis, projecting tactical data onto the air around her. And the human looked mildly inconvenienced. He looked the way one might look upon discovering the milk had gone sour. "Your reaction is anomalous," Loriana chimed, her translated voice strained. "Your species' biology dictates a fight or flight response. Your adrenaline and cortisol levels should be spiking. Your heart rate should be dangerously elevated. Yet you display signs of boredom." "Boredom? No, not bored. Just, Jake said, gesturing vaguely with his mug. "This is going to mess up the whole afternoon schedule. I was planning on reorganizing my sock drawer." Kaeldar took a step toward him, his sheer mass making the deck plates groan. "Human, do you not comprehend the situation? The gloomfang is one of the most dangerous predatory organisms ever cataloged. It does not merely kill with tooth and claw. Its primary weapon is psionic. It projects a wave of pure, undiluted existential dread. It forces its prey to experience the heat death of the universe, the totality of its own insignificance, the absolute certainty of its own agonizing demise, all in the space of a single second. It liquefies neural pathways. It stops hearts. Against such a weapon, armor is useless. Courage is a liability. It is fear given form. Jake nodded slowly, processing this. He looked down into his mug, then back up at the furious warrior. So, basically, it's a psychic toddler throwing a tantrum. This statement was so profoundly, so cosmically out of place that for a moment, the two most powerful beings on the ship were stunned into absolute silence. The only sound was the still blaring alarm and the soft, squeaking noise of Jake's shoes as he shifted his weight. "Hey, toddler," Kaeldar repeated, the words sounding alien and absurd coming from his rumbling chest cavity. "Yeah," Jake confirmed. "You know, when they get overtired and they just sort of lose it. They scream and cry and nothing you do can calm them down. And you feel this deep, profound sense of hopelessness, like you've failed as a caregiver and everything is awful. It passes, though. You just have to wait it out. Or find the right distraction." Loriana's light form flickered erratically. "My analysis of your analogy suggests a catastrophic cognitive disconnect. You are comparing a class Omega bioform, a literal apex predator of the void, to an immature specimen of your own species." "Well, yeah," Jake said, shrugging. "The principle's the same. Big emotions, not enough control. It's just scared and lashing out because it's in a new place and it doesn't know what's going on." Before either of them could formulate a reply to this latest bout of insanity, a heavy, rhythmic thump, thump, thump began to echo from the corridor beyond the bridge's main blast door. It was the sound of something immense, something heavy, moving with unnerving purpose. Then came the sound of tearing metal, a high-pitched shriek as the durasteel door, designed to withstand torpedo impacts, was ripped from its hinges. A wave of something cold and dreadful washed over the bridge. It wasn't a physical sensation, but a mental one. It was the feeling of utter despair, the chilling certainty that all your efforts were meaningless. It was the taste of ash and the smell of graves. Kaeldar let out a guttural roar, a sound of defiance, but it was strained. His powerful legs trembled slightly, and one of his 4 hands went to the hilt of the ceremonial plasma axe at his belt, but he couldn't seem to draw it. The warrior who had faced down fleets and crushed rebellions was being held in place by an enemy he couldn't see, couldn't hit, couldn't comprehend. High Proctor Loriana went utterly still. The glowing filaments within her crystalline body dimmed to a dull, fearful gray. The frantic data streams she had been projecting flickered and died. Her perfect, logical mind was being swamped by a tidal wave of irrational terror, a recursive loop of failure and finality. She was experiencing the intellectual equivalent of total system collapse. All her knowledge, all her processing power, was useless against the primal, absolute horror flooding her consciousness. The shredded remains of the blast door were flung aside, and the gloomfang slithered onto the bridge. It was a nightmare given substance. It was larger than Kaeldar, a mass of glistening, shifting black flesh that seemed to absorb the light around it. It had too many limbs, each ending in a blade of obsidian-like bone. A cluster of unblinking, crimson eyes, devoid of pupils or emotion, surveyed the room. It had no discernible mouth, yet a low, vibrating hum emanated from it, a sound that resonated with the frequency of bone and the vibration of pure dread. The psychic pressure intensified tenfold. It was the feeling of being buried alive, of drowning in an endless, cold ocean, of watching everyone you ever loved turn to dust before your eyes. Kaeldar fell to one knee, his great axe clattering to the floor. His mandibles chattered uncontrollably, not with aggression, but with abject terror. He was seeing visions of his homeworld consumed by a dying sun, of his entire lineage ending in shame and defeat. Loriana simply switched off. Her internal light extinguished completely, leaving her a dull, lifeless crystal statue, a monument to a mind that had been comprehensively broken. The Gloomfang's cluster of eyes fixed on the only creature still standing. Jake. The wave of existential dread washed over him. He blinked. He tilted his head slightly, a gesture of mild curiosity. He felt a faint pressure behind his eyes, a dull throb reminiscent of a caffeine headache. In the back of his mind, a vague, fleeting image of a forgotten dental appointment surfaced, causing a minor pang of annoyance before it vanished. And that was it. The Gloomfang seemed to pause, its terrifying hum faltering for a microsecond. It had just unleashed a psychic blast capable of turning a starship captain's brain into lukewarm soup, and the soft, fleshy biped in the strange shirt had reacted as if a fly had just buzzed past its ear. It tilted its non-head, a gesture of what could almost be confusion. "Hey there, big fella," Jake said, his voice soft and even. He placed his coffee mug carefully on a nearby console. "You're making a real mess of things, you know that." He took a step forward. The Gloomfang instinctively recoiled, a ripple of unease passing through its amorphous flesh. This was not the correct response. Prey was supposed to cower. It was supposed to scream. Its mind was supposed to shatter. This one was approaching. Jake took another step. "It's all right. You're just scared. I get it. New place, bright lights, lots of loud noises. It's overwhelming." He was now only a few feet from the creature. Kaeldar, watching through a haze of terror, could only process the scene as a form of madness. The human was going to be torn limb from limb, atomized, devoured. But the Gloomfang didn't attack. It just watched, its crimson eyes tracking the small, soft thing that showed no fear. No fear at all. This was a biological, a psychic impossibility. Everything in the universe felt fear. Fear was the great constant. "Look," Jake said, stopping just out of reach of its bone blades. He held up his hands, palms open, a universal gesture of non-aggression. He had absolutely no reason to believe this creature would understand. But it wasn't the gesture that mattered. It was the intent behind it, the utter lack of malice, the profound, unshakable calm. Then he did something that would be forever burned into the memory of every conscious being on that bridge. He sat down. He just folded his legs, crossed them in a simple, comfortable manner, and sat on the cold chromaloid deck right in front of the galaxy's most feared predator. He looked up at it and gave it a small, patient smile. "We can just sit here for a minute until you feel better," he said quietly. "No rush." The Gloomfang was utterly, completely flummoxed. Its entire evolutionary history, its entire predatory strategy, was built on the foundation of terror. It was a psychic shark, and it had just encountered a creature that didn't know what water was. The psychic energy it was projecting began to waver, its focus lost. It had no protocol for this situation. It had no response for a creature that met its soul-destroying horror with gentle patience. Slowly, cautiously, one of its bladed limbs extended toward Jake. It trembled, not with aggression, but with uncertainty. Jake didn't flinch. He just watched it, his expression calm and open. The limb stopped an inch from his face. The Gloomfang let out a low, questioning hum. Jake reached up slowly and gently patted the limb, right next to the razor-sharp bone blade. "There now," he murmured. "See? It's okay. Everything's going to be okay." The effect was instantaneous. The crushing psychic pressure across the bridge vanished as if a switch had been thrown. The Gloomfang's terrifying hum softened, changing pitch into something that sounded remarkably like a purr. It retracted its limb, and its entire tense, monstrous form seemed to relax, slumping slightly like a relieved sigh. It settled onto the deck, its cluster of crimson eyes blinking slowly, all focused on the small, soft creature who had shown it not terror, but kindness. The silence that followed was more profound than any noise. Kaeldar slowly, shakily, got to his feet. The visions of horror had faded, leaving behind a deep, bone-aching exhaustion and a sense of vertigo, as if the very ground beneath him had become unstable. He stared at the human, who was now murmuring quietly to the docile monster, and then at the High Proctor, whose crystalline form was slowly beginning to glow again with a pale, confused light. "How?" Kaeldar's voice was a ragged whisper, stripped of all its command and authority. It was the voice of a being who had just witnessed the fundamental laws of his reality being casually rewritten. That was a projection of pure existential dread. It should have. It should have liquefied your neural pathways. Jake looked over his shoulder, still sitting on the floor. He gave the Lord Commander a gentle smile. Oh, that? Yeah, it was a bit much. A little on the nose, if you ask me. He slowly stood up, brushing off his trousers. The Gloomfang made a soft noise, almost a whimper, as he moved away. Jake gave its flank another reassuring pat. You want to know how? Jake asked, walking back toward the command dais. It's simple, really. You guys just have a skewed perspective on what's actually scary. He leaned against the console, crossing his arms. He looked like a teacher about to explain a difficult concept to a class of very, very confused children. You see, you think this thing, he said, hooking a thumb toward the now docile Gloomfang, is the pinnacle of terror. You're not wrong, from your perspective. It's a big, scary monster that weaponizes fear. But where I come from, that's just Tuesday. Loriana's light was now a steady, questioning blue. Explain. Your statement is illogical. No environment could produce a resistance to such a direct psychic assault. That's where you're wrong, Jake said. You've read the files on Earth. High gravity, tectonic instability, extreme weather, a ridiculous axial tilt causing chaotic seasons. You know the basics. But you've missed the point. You see all of that as a list of planetary weaknesses. We call it home. He began to pace slowly, his squeaky shoes the only sound in the cavernous silence. Let's talk about fear. You think fear is a big, dramatic blast of psychic energy. For us, it's a low, constant hum in the background of our entire existence. You are feeling the heat death of the universe, right? I feel a milder version of that every time I look at my bank account after paying rent. You felt the certainty of your own agonizing demise. That's the feeling we get when we're stuck in traffic and we realize we're going to be late for a very important meeting. He stopped and looked at Kaeldar. That feeling of absolute insignificance. We have a thing called social media. It's a global network designed to make you feel cripplingly inadequate by comparing your life to the carefully curated highlight reels of billions of other people. We voluntarily subject ourselves to that, for fun. Kaeldar's mandibles hung slightly open. The Gloomfang's big trick is existential dread, Jake continued. But human consciousness is practically built on a foundation of low-grade, constant existential dread. It's our baseline. We wake up in the morning and for a split second we have to process the entire weight of our own mortality, our responsibilities, and the knowledge that we forgot to put the garbage out last night. That psychic blast from your monster? For me, that barely registered above the background noise of a typical Monday morning. He turned to Loriana. You think our planet is dangerous because of volcanoes and earthquakes. You're not thinking small enough. We have insects that can kill you. Tiny little flying things. We have plants that are covered in neurotoxins. We have fungi that can liquefy your internal organs if you eat them. We have fish that look like rocks and can inject you with a venom so painful you'd beg for death. We have spiders. Let's not even get into the spiders. And Australia, he added, as an afterthought. The entire continent is basically a beta test for God's more homicidal creations. He let that sink in for a moment. You see, you guys evolved on nice, stable planets. Your predators were straightforward. Big teeth, big claws. You could see them coming. On Earth, everything is trying to kill everything else, all the time, often in very sneaky ways. Our squirrels are known to be aggressive. The fluffy, nut-gathering rodents. They will fight you, and sometimes win. So our brains had to adapt. We developed anxiety. It's a feature, not a bug. It's a constant, low-level threat assessment program running in our subconscious. Is that berry poisonous? Is that shadow a predator? Did I leave the oven on? The Gloomfang tried to hit me with a terror bomb, but my brain just classified it as unspecified anxiety, filed it under things to worry about later, and moved on. He walked over to the Gloomfang, which looked up at him with its cluster of eyes, now full of something akin to adoration. He gently stroked its dark, shifting hide. And that's not even the best part, he said, his voice dropping slightly. We take all this horror, all this danger, and we turn it into recreation. We climb mountains for fun. We jump out of perfectly good airplanes. We strap boards to our feet and slide down frozen mountains at suicidal speeds. We run for dozens of kilometers until our bodies are screaming in agony and call it a marathon. We actively seek out terror and call it entertainment. We built an entire industry around making scary movies that simulate the experience of being hunted by monsters. He looked back at the two aliens, whose expressions, one of chitinous shock, the other of crystalline overload, were identical. I used to be a kindergarten teacher, Jake said, and this statement seemed to break Kael'thar's brain more thoroughly than the Gloomfang had. Hey, what? A trainer of larval warriors? The commander stammered. No, a teacher. 4 5-year-olds, Jake clarified. And let me tell you something. You think that Gloomfang is scary? You have never been locked in a room with 25 small, sticky, irrational beings who have just consumed their body weight in sugar. You have never seen the abyss until you've tried to reason with a toddler who has decided that the color blue is now a personal insult. The Gloomfang has one trick: psychic dread. A 5-year-old has a million. They weaponize noise, fluids, emotional blackmail, and a complete disregard for the laws of physics. They can go from angelic laughter to demonic screaming in less than a second. That thing, he said, patting the Gloomfang again, was just scared and overwhelmed. I recognized the signs. It needed a timeout, not a plasma blast. He smiled warmly. You see, our greatest strength has never been claws or armor or psychic powers. It's that we're so fundamentally breakable, so pathetic on the surface, that we've had to become masters of the one thing that truly matters: pressure. We can withstand any pressure. Physical, mental, social, emotional. We live in it. We thrive in it. Your greatest weapon is our ambient emotional state. He straightened up, his monologue complete. The bridge was silent once more. Kael'thar looked at his plasma axe on the floor. He looked at his own 4 powerful hands. He had dedicated his life to the pursuit of strength, yet he had been brought to his knees by a feeling, while the soft, fragile human had treated it like a minor inconvenience. His entire philosophy, his species' entire culture, was a house of cards, and this human had just casually blown it over. Loriana's facets were cycling through a rainbow of muted, confused colors. Her logical mind was desperately trying to recategorize the human species. They were not a level 4 prey civilization. They were something else. Something new. Something terrifying. The data was flawed. All of it. Their perceived weakness wasn't a flaw. It was camouflage. The most effective camouflage in the history of the galaxy. They were apex predators hiding in the skin of prey. Their entire world is a crucible, she chimed, her voice faint and filled with a new, chilling emotion: respect. A psychological forge that has tempered them into this. We have miscalculated, Kael'thar rumbled, his voice heavy with the weight of this new reality. We have profoundly, catastrophically miscalculated. The Gloomfang, now thoroughly calm, nudged Jake's hand with its head, seeking another pat. Jake obliged, scratching a spot behind what he assumed was an auditory sensor. Kael'thar took a deep, shuddering breath. He looked at the human, who was now cooing softly at the cosmic horror. Human Jake, he said, his voice trembling with a mixture of awe and raw fear. What? What will you do now? Jake looked up from the Gloomfang and glanced at the chronometer on the console. He seemed to consider the question seriously for a moment. Well, he said, a thoughtful expression on his face. It's about time for my lunch break. I was thinking of having that reconstituted nutrient paste, the beige 1-inch. He smiled, a simple, pleasant, utterly terrifying smile. I find its profound lack of flavor quite soothing.